Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a time when a vast, diverse nation stood at a really critical crossroads, grappling with these deep internal divisions, yet, simultaneously yearning for some kind of common, unified future. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into, well, a profoundly pivotal moment in Indian history, the year 1916, and a monumental event known as the Lucknow Pact. This wasn't just like another political negotiation. It was, as our sources reveal, a real turning point, marked by this palpable surge in political activity, but also, and this is the paradox, a deepening sense of mistrust, even fragmentation between its major communities. Think about it for a second. In our own lives, or, in the wider world today, how often do we see these deep societal divisions, the kind that seem almost insurmountable? And how challenging is it to really build bridges when the chasms between groups seem so wide, so entrenched? Our mission in this deep dive is to meticulously extract the most important nuggets of knowledge from the sources you've generously provided, shedding vivid light on how what seems like an impossible feat, a monumental, unprecedented attempt at unity actually became a tangible reality, if only for a fleeting, yet you could say glorious moment. It's a powerful narrative of political will, strategic compromise, and, well, the extraordinary efforts of individuals who dared to envision a different path.
What's truly fascinating here is that this wasn't merely a simple political agreement, a handshake deal. It was a profound act of bridge building, forged in a political landscape that was ripe, almost tragically so, for fragmentation. The sources we've examined paint a really nuanced, often complex picture of India at this time. You have these two major communities, Hindus and Muslims, frequently finding themselves at odds, particularly over the crucial and often very contentious issue of political representation, within any future self-governing structure. And this division, it's vital to understand this, wasn't just accidental or solely organic. It was a reality the British actively and frankly cunningly exploited through their notorious long-standing policy of divide and rule. They deliberately exacerbated existing communal tensions, sometimes even creating new ones, all to maintain their vice-like grip on power and deflect any unified nationalist challenge. To put it into perspective a bit, consider the Morley Minto reforms of 1909. These came years before Lucknow, and they'd already formally introduced separate electorates for Muslims. So this British initiative essentially formalized communal political identity. It created a system where Hindu and Muslim leaders were often incentivized to appeal primarily to their own communities, rather than building broader intercommunal platforms. This pre-existing framework, you see, intentionally fostered by the colonial power, formed the very adversarial landscape that leaders like Muhammad Ali Jinnah and others had to navigate. The inherent challenge, therefore, was just immense. How do you foster genuine unity, real cooperation between disparate political bodies, like the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League, which largely operated as separate entities under such deliberately adversarial circumstances?
Right, they were almost set up to fail,
Yeah,
in a way.
exactly. It's a timeless lesson in political dynamics, isn't it?
Yeah.
Shows us how easily external forces can amplify and, yes, manipulate internal divisions, making the task of unity exponentially harder.
And into this deeply fractured, politically charged landscape, a figure emerges. Someone already respected, perhaps even revered for his integrity, his sharp intellect, and his unwavering moderation. Our sources universally highlight Muhammad Ali Jinnah as the central, you could say indispensable, figure in this extraordinary attempt at unity. This specific moment, the signing of the Lucknow Pact in 1916, wasn't just a political triumph for him. It was the event that earned him his most famous early title, the Ambassador of Hindu-Muslim Unity. And this wasn't merely a courtesy or some kind of honorific title. It was a widespread recognition, spanning both communities, of his truly unique ability to transcend these deeply entrenched communal barriers. It really underscores the immense, almost foundational importance of Jinnah's personal reputation. His unblemished record as a legal mind, his perceived fairness, his deep commitment to constitutionalism. This was the very bedrock, really, upon which he could even begin to lay the groundwork for these incredibly delicate unity talks. It's here, as we begin to uncover how this unprecedented unity was painstakingly forged despite all the significant, almost overwhelming challenges, that the story truly starts to, well, take shape. So to truly appreciate the monumental achievement that was the Lucknow Pact, we absolutely need to immerse ourselves, just for a bit, in the political atmosphere it was born into. Our sources paint a very clear, often vivid picture of an India where calls for self-governance, for constitutional reforms, were getting louder, more insistent, more widespread, particularly in, say, the first decade and a half of the 20th century. But simultaneously, and this is the crucial paradox, the fault lines within society, these communal and regional divides, were also becoming more pronounced, sometimes even inflamed.
It's a fascinating tension, isn't it?
Absolutely. Increasing political activity, while obviously essential for a burgeoning national consciousness, could, without a clear, unifying vision, inadvertently lead to deeper mistrust and divisions rather than cohesion. You can almost imagine the intense public debates, the passionate private discussions that must have been happening everywhere in India, in bustling tea houses, within the, hallowed halls of political salons, even in whispered conversations in village squares. These were discussions about fervent aspirations for self-governance, clashing with the deeply entrenched realities of existing communal structures, and, of course, the British engineered system of separate representation.
Hmm.
The tension between that desire for national progress and the profound fear of marginalization among minority groups, it must have been palpable, making the prospect of genuine cross-communal unity seem incredibly distant, almost an impossible dream, really.
And the First World War, which was raging at this time, that also played a crucial, though perhaps indirect role. It exposed the vulnerabilities of the British Empire, didn't it?
Right.
While simultaneously providing a kind of window of opportunity for Indian leaders to press for greater concessions. They realized that British attention was diverted, their imperial hold potentially weakened.
So that added another layer of urgency to the whole situation.
Precisely. And placing this in a broader context, what we observe isn't just about, two communities having disagreements. It's fundamentally about the very architecture of representation within a complex colonial system, a system designed to fragment, not unite. The Indian National Congress, which had long been a prominent voice pressing for constitutional reforms, representing a broad spectrum of Indian opinion, well, they were struggling with a fundamental internal challenge, weak Muslim participation.
Right, and the critical question is why? Why was that the case?
Because, as our sources powerfully articulate, many Muslims genuinely feared that their distinct interests would be sidelined. Or even, to use that potent imagery from the period, drowned within a Hindu-majority political platform. Now, this wasn't necessarily an abstract fear rooted solely in religious difference. It was a deeply practical concern about political efficacy, about genuine representation. They worried that any reforms achieved primarily by a Hindu-majority body might not adequately protect or advance their specific cultural, economic, and political needs and aspirations. It profoundly highlights the inherent challenge of ensuring robust, meaningful minority representation within any majoritarian system, especially one where historical, cultural, and political differences are significant and where, let's not forget, an external power is actively stoking those differences.
So it wasn't just about votes, it was about their whole identity being potentially overlooked.
Exactly. Their unique identity, cultural considerations, specific economic vulnerabilities. All of that being overlooked, absorbed, or simply neglected in the rush towards a broader, potentially undifferentiated national identity. This deep-seated anxiety meant that for unity to be truly meaningful, these fears had to be addressed with concrete, tangible political safeguards.
Okay, so on the other side of this intricate political spectrum, we encountered the Muslim League, an organization formed relatively recently, 1906, right?
That's correct.
Our sources reveal it was still very much finding its footing in this complex, often treacherous political landscape. It grappled with limited widespread influence, and perhaps somewhat unfairly but persistently, it was even perceived by some as being too loyal to the British, which naturally undercut its nationalist credentials among certain segments of the population.
That perception was definitely a hurdle.
So, consider the scene. You have these two major political entities, the Congress and the League, both with their own distinct internal struggles, their own inherent limitations, and, crucially, their own perceived vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities in the face of colonial power and this internal communal mistrust, the internal dynamics of the nascent Muslim League, for instance, that must have involved this constant, arduous challenge, trying to establish broad credibility and a robust mass base among the diverse Muslim communities across India. A huge task.
All while simultaneously navigating this delicate perception that they were too closely aligned with the colonial power.
Right. And that alignment, whether it was real or just perceived, could easily undermine their legitimacy as a truly nationalist voice fighting for Indian rights.
So what this meant for both the Congress and the League was this growing, inescapable realization. Operating in isolation was becoming an increasingly untenable strategy, indeed a self-defeating one.
Absolutely. Especially for achieving any meaningful progress against the formidable might of British rule. They each held a crucial piece of the puzzle, you could say, but neither could complete it alone. This brings us to a critical inflection point, and it raises a profound question. What fundamental shifts occurred? What crucial realizations emerged to bring these two seemingly disparate bodies, the Congress and the Muslim League, together at this particular juncture? In 1916, our sources emphatically suggest that by then a crucial, pragmatic realization had dawned within the leadership of both organizations. Neither could effectively achieve its larger, overarching goals, constitutional reform, self-governance alone. This wasn't necessarily some sudden ideological conversion, but rather a strategic recognition of mutual dependency, a powerful acknowledgement of a shared political necessity.
A pragmatic move, then.
Very much so. The Congress, for its part, desperately needed the legitimacy and the sheer numerical demographic strength that significant Muslim support could provide. Without a substantial unified portion of the Muslim population on board, their demands for national constitutional reforms could be too easily dismissed by the British.
Right, the British could just say, well, that's just the Hindus speaking.
Precisely. They could simply continue their divide and rule narrative, claiming the Indian demand wasn't truly national. The League, in turn, desperately needed broader credibility and a wider, more influential platform to advance its agenda, moving beyond what some perceived as its limited, perhaps even pro-British leanings.
They needed to be seen as part of the bigger picture.
Exactly. Their initial focus on Muslim rights needed to be contextualized within a larger national movement to gain traction and respect across the political spectrum. Continued fragmentation, a lack of unified progress against British rule, that would have undoubtedly led to continued colonial dominance, a weakening of nationalist aspirations, and failure to achieve any significant self-governance. It was this stark, practical assessment of their individual limitations, coupled with the strategic opportunities presented by the First World War, that truly set the stage for this unprecedented historic cooperation.
So, with this confluence of pressures and this dawning realization of mutual need, the stage was indeed set for what would become a truly historic compromise. And it was emphatically not about one side giving in completely to the other, or one ideology triumphing.
No, not at all.
Rather, it was about both organizations realizing, with striking clarity, that their individual strength, however significant, was fundamentally insufficient for the overarching goal. That goal being constitutional reforms and securing greater Indian representation and self-rule. It's that classic two heads are better than one scenario, isn't it? But elevated to a national political scale, with the very future of a nation hanging in the balance.
A very apt analogy.
This, you must agree, is a powerful and enduring lesson in political strategy. It profoundly demonstrates that sometimes the most effective, indeed the only effective path forward isn't through individual struggle or rigid adherence to singular positions, but through strategic cooperation and a deep understanding that collective action can achieve what isolated, disparate efforts simply cannot. It represents a kind of aha moment applicable not just to nation building, but to any group facing a seemingly insurmountable challenge, realizing that pooling resources, perspectives, efforts that can exponentially increase the chances of success. Now, at this incredibly delicate, indeed precarious moment in Indian politics, our sources universally emphasize Muhammad Ali Jinnah's absolutely crucial and almost singular role as a bridge builder. His reputation, as we noted, wasn't merely about his formidable intellect or his sharp political acumen. It was profoundly and undeniably about trust.
Trust was key. Absolutely key.
He was consistently seen as a moderate, a man of principles whose word carried immense weight. This made him respected in both camps among the diverse, often ideologically varied, prominent Hindu leaders within the Congress, and crucially within the sometimes fragmented Muslim League. This unique position made him the natural, arguably indispensable negotiator. Think for a moment about how incredibly rare that is, in any political context, really, to be equally trusted by opposing factions, especially when the stakes are as astronomically high as they were for the future of a nation.
It's almost unheard of.
The psychological and political importance of having such a neutral, credible, and universally respected figure in high-stakes negotiations, well, it cannot be overstated. His intrinsic qualities, his integrity, his perceived fairness, his objectivity, his unwavering commitment to a constitutional and legal path, and his ability to see beyond immediate communal demands to a larger national interest were precisely what was needed.
To keep both sides at the table, yes. Navigating suspicion and finding that common ground.
It profoundly highlights the universal and timeless value of a skilled, principled mediator in resolving deeply entrenched conflicts, whether they are personal disputes, communal tensions, or these large-scale political impasses that could otherwise just spiral into irreconcilable division.
And what's truly fascinating here, with the sources meticulously detailed, is the sheer, indefatigable amount of tireless work Jinnah put in behind the scenes. This wasn't about, a single public grandstanding event, a lone soaring speech that swayed opinions overnight.
No quick fix.
Not at all. It was a meticulous, months-long, painstaking process of persuasion, delicate negotiation, and detailed legal drafting. Imagine the countless smoky committee rooms, the late-night sessions, the private dinners, the arduous back and forth between often skeptical factions. On one hand, he faced the immense task of convincing prominent Hindu leaders, many of whom we have to remember had previously rejected separate electorates as inherently unnationalist. They saw them as British-imposed divisions.
Right, that was a major hurdle.
A huge one. He had to convince them that these specific safeguards were not a concession to communal fragmentation, but a necessary political reality for building a truly united front against colonial rule. He argued, eloquently and pragmatically, that it was a temporary strategic measure designed to build trust and assuage genuine fears, a calculated sacrifice for a greater collective gain. He engaged in crucial dialogues with formidable nationalist figures like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who, despite his own immense political strength and influence, ultimately saw the strategic imperative of unity and was, swayed by Jinnah's reasoning. Simultaneously, Jinnah had to bring skeptical Muslim leaders on board. Some were deeply entrenched in communal politics, others wary of the Congress's perceived Hindu-majority leanings, and some still held on to a more pro-British stance.
So he was fighting battles on multiple fronts.
Absolutely. He assured them, with equal conviction, that cooperation with the Congress was not a surrender of their distinct identity or specific interests. Instead, he argued it was an essential strategic move for achieving broader constitutional reforms that would unequivocally benefit all of India, including the Muslim community, by leveraging a unified and undeniable voice. He had to bridge not only the Hindu-Muslim divide, but also internal divisions within the Muslim League itself, between the moderates and the younger, more stridently nationalist elements.
Wow.
This required a profound understanding of both sides' deep-seated anxieties and their distinct aspirations, a sharp legal mind capable of drafting precise, mutually acceptable clauses, and, perhaps most crucially, an unshakable belief in the possibility of unity.
Ponder for a moment how easily these intricate talks could have collapsed without someone like Jinnah.
Exactly. Someone capable of navigating these deeply entrenched, often opposing beliefs, finding a path to mutual concession, and balancing high ideals with pragmatic political realities. His legal background, his reputation for fairness, his dedication to constitutional solutions, all vital in this complex behind-the-scenes dance.
So what was the undeniable consequence of all this meticulous, often unseen effort? Our sources are explicit and unequivocal. Without Jinnah's tireless involvement, the pervasive suspicion, the deep-seated mistrust that characterized the political landscape, well, it might have derailed these crucial talks entirely.
It very likely would have. There was just so much historical friction, so much apprehension. A less credible or less universally respected figure would have struggled immensely, perhaps even failed, to keep both parties engaged.
But with his involvement, trust wasn't merely assumed or wished for, it was actively and painstakingly built. Piece by incremental piece, through his consistent impartiality and unwavering commitment to a just outcome. This highlights, with stunning clarity, how much a single, credible individual armed with integrity, an unwavering commitment to fairness, and exceptional negotiating skill can genuinely shift the course of history when the moment is right.
It really does.
It's not just about the grand ideas or the urgent, undeniable need for change. It's about the specific people who champion those ideas and possess that unique ability to build the bridges necessary for progress. Jinnah wasn't just facilitating a conversation. He was actively embodying the very principles of dialogue, compromise, and constitutionalism that were absolutely essential for the Pact's eventual success.
That's a great way to put it.
This powerfully underscores the idea that individuals, through their character and actions, can significantly influence historical trajectories, often far more profoundly than we might initially give them credit for. His personal reputation became the currency of trust, really, that allowed the transaction of compromise to occur.
And this intricate, painstaking groundwork brings us directly to the core of the agreement itself, the Lucknow Pact of 1916. Its terms, meticulously laid out in our sources, were truly landmark, not just for what they explicitly stated, but for the profound spirit of pragmatic compromise and mutual respect they embodied. Let's peel back the layers and break down these pivotal provisions, because each one played a critical and interconnected role in establishing this unique, if ultimately temporary, moment of unity. The first, and perhaps the most significant provision agreed upon representing a truly monumental concession from the Congress, was the establishment of separate electorates.
Okay, let's unpack this concept a little further because it's absolutely central to understanding the pact. Separate electorates meant that Muslims would elect their own representatives in both provincial and central legislatures, exclusively from Muslim constituencies. Now, for some, looking at this through a modern lens, this might seem inherently divisive, right? Creating distinct political lanes, potentially solidifying communal identity.
That's often the modern critique, yes.
However, in the very specific and deeply complex context of the time, our sources make it abundantly clear that this was considered a truly crucial and, well, non-negotiable safeguard. While the British had previously introduced separate electorates in the Morley-Minto reforms of 1909, formalizing communal representation, the Congress had for years vehemently opposed them. They viewed them as inherently divisive, a deliberate obstacle to national unity. So for them to now endorse separate electorates within the Lucknow Pact, that was a strategic pivot of immense proportions. It demonstrated a profound willingness to compromise their long-held ideological stance for the greater immediate goal of united action against colonial rule.
It was a huge step for them.
This wasn't about segregation for its own sake, but about directly addressing that deeply held fear we talked about earlier, the fear of Muslim voices being effectively drowned out, their specific political interests ignored in a Hindu majority electorate. For many Hindu leaders, this must have been a tough pill to swallow, requiring them to acknowledge distinct Muslim political interests in a way they had previously resisted.
Definitely. It was a calculated risk, recognizing that without this guaranteed political space, the Muslim League, and indeed the wider Muslim community, would likely never fully commit to a joint front.
Got it. So it's a powerful example of tailored representation designed to address the anxieties of a minority group and give them a palpable, guaranteed stake in the political process.
Indeed. And building on that, the pact also included a provision for proportional representation. This went beyond simply the mechanism of separate electorates. This guaranteed Muslims fixed percentages of seats in different provinces. And these were carefully calibrated not just by population, but often with a crucial element of weightage.
Weightage, what exactly does that mean?
Well, in provinces where Muslims constituted a numerical minority, like the United Provinces or Bihar, they were allocated a higher percentage of seats than their population share might numerically justify.
Ah, okay.
Conversely, in provinces where they were a majority, like Bengal or Punjab, they often received slightly fewer seats than their population percentage would suggest. This was a concession to the Hindu minority there. This was a deliberate and vital concession from the Congress side, providing Muslims with an enhanced political voice and ensuring their influence in governance was not only established but also predictable and substantial.
So it wasn't just a vague promise of inclusion.
Not at all. It was a concrete numerical assurance, ensuring their presence and influence was established and predictable. It allowed for a more stable and influential political role for Muslims within the legislative framework. It was a layered approach, you see, clearly distinguishing the Lucknow Pact strategy from a simple, winner-take-all majoritarian system. It offered a robust safeguard against marginalization and fostered a sense of security that was absolutely essential for unity.
The specific percentages must have been incredibly hard to negotiate.
Oh, undoubtedly. Reflecting the incredible detail and difficult compromises that went into crafting this whole agreement.
And here's where the pact truly resonated, amplifying its message outwards, particularly to the British, and making a profound impact on the larger national movement. The third crucial provision was a joint demand for reforms. This was colossal.
Truly significant.
For the first time, both the Indian National Congress and the All India Muslim League, standing shoulder to shoulder, jointly and unequivocally demanded greater Indian representation in governance, aiming for nothing less than a substantial measure of self-government. This wasn't just two groups making separate appeals or issuing individual manifestos. This was a truly united front, a powerful, unmistakable signal to the British colonial administration that the Indian political leadership, across communal lines, was serious, unified, and absolutely determined in its pursuit of self-rule.
Imagine the impact.
Exactly. Imagine the immediate and long-term impact this united voice would have had on the colonial administration. It fundamentally changed the dynamic from one of internal squabbles and fragmented requests, which the British could easily dismiss or exploit, into a formidable, collective, and unified national aspiration.
It transformed the perception.
Totally. It transformed the perception of the Indian demand from a chorus of disparate voices into a powerful, undeniable roar that could no longer be ignored or easily divided. This joint demand served notice that the divide and rule strategy now faced a united opposition.
Exactly. And this led directly, logically, to the fourth overarching provision, which was truly revolutionary: unity in negotiation. For the very first time in such a significant political capacity, Hindus and Muslims, represented by their two leading political organizations, presented a common formidable front to the British regarding constitutional reform. Absolutely unprecedented. Our sources clearly state that this was a moment that simultaneously gave Muslims concrete assurance of political safeguards through the acceptance of separate electorates and proportional representation. This directly addressed their long-standing fears of political marginalization. And at the same time, it unequivocally demonstrated Hindu-Muslim cooperation at a national level for the broader shared goal of constitutional reform and greater Indian self-governance. It was a sophisticated balancing act, really. A win-win situation, meticulously built on mutual concessions, demonstrating a level of political maturity and strategic foresight that was truly remarkable for its time.
It showed they could look beyond their immediate differences.
Precisely. It showcased that despite their inherent differences and historical anxieties, both communities recognized a larger, shared objective freedom from colonial rule and a dignified place in a self-governing India that could only be achieved through solidarity and a united voice. This unity in negotiation sent a clear message that the long-held colonial strategy of driving a wedge between India's major communities was, at least for this moment, failing.
So what did this all truly mean for the people of India themselves, beyond the political elite? Our sources tell us that the pact was met with widespread celebration across the country. It ignited a genuine sense of enthusiasm and optimism.
You can almost feel it.
Leaders from various communities and regions hailed it as the dawn of a truly new era of cooperation and understanding, a beacon of hope for a united nation. You can almost feel that wave of optimism sweeping through the subcontinent. Imagine the headlines in the nascent Indian press, the animated public gatherings, the feeling of hope spreading from bustling urban centers to remote villages. As ordinary people saw their leaders, previously perceived as being at odds, standing together hand in hand for a common future.
It must have been incredibly powerful.
It was a moment of immense psychological uplift, a powerful counter-narrative to the prevailing communal divisions that the British had so assiduously cultivated. This newfound unity offered a tantalizing glimpse of what a truly independent, united India might look like, fostering a sense of shared destiny and reigniting the spirit of nationalism with a fresh vigor.
And placing this in a broader context, the symbolism of the Lucknow Pact was profound for both communities, and for very distinct yet interconnected reasons. For Muslims, it was concrete, undeniable proof that their specific rights, their distinct political interests, and their fears of marginalization could indeed be secured through negotiation, through active strategic political engagement within a broader national framework, rather than through isolation, a go-it-alone approach, or sole reliance on British patronage, which had often left them feeling unheard.
So it validated their strategy.
Absolutely. A powerful validation of their evolving political strategy, confirming that their concerns about representation were not only acknowledged but formally addressed through a legally binding agreement by the predominant nationalist body. For Hindus, it was equally significant. It was undeniable, tangible evidence that Muslims were genuinely willing to stand alongside them in the broader struggle for constitutional reforms and ultimately for self-rule. This demonstrated a powerful, shared national purpose, a unity of intent which the British had long denied and actively sought to discredit. This was a critical step in building a foundational sense of trust and a shared sense of destiny, showing how concrete political agreements can profoundly boost morale, strengthen broader social and political movements, and forge a common identity, even across diverse communities. It transformed the perception of the nationalist movement from a largely Hindu-led endeavor into a truly pan-Indian struggle.
And for the British colonial administration, this was most certainly a sharp warning shot across the bow, a clear and unwelcome signal.
They must have taken notice.
Oh, absolutely. Our sources are explicit. India's two great communities could, in fact, unite if pushed too far by colonial policies and by the continued denial of legitimate political aspirations. It fundamentally and dramatically changed the narrative from one of easily exploitable divide and rule, which had been the cornerstone of British imperial strategy,
to a stark and undeniable reality of united we stand, at least for this particular triumphant moment in time.
That must have sent serious ripples, indeed tremors, through the colonial administration. prompting new discussions, urgent dispatches back to Whitehall.
A potential reevaluation of their long-standing strategy.
Exactly. A reevaluation of maintaining power through division. How, they must have wondered, would they now contend with a truly united front that commanded such widespread support and presented a cohesive set of demands? It surely influenced their policy discussions and their overall perception of the growing strength, coherence, and seriousness of Indian nationalism, recognizing that a truly united India posed a far greater challenge to their imperial authority than a fragmented one. It forced them to confront a political reality they had long tried to prevent.
This brings us directly to Muhammad Ali Jinnah's personal legacy from this pivotal moment. His central, instrumental, and indeed irreplaceable role in both meticulously crafting the intricate clauses of the pact and then tirelessly defending its principles earned him widespread admiration from all sides, from prominent Hindu and Muslim leaders, moderate and extremist factions within the Congress, and crucially from the general populace.
It wasn't just about being present.
Not at all. It was about his indefatigable actions, his meticulous attention to legal and political detail, and his unique ability to articulate the needs and fears of both communities in a way that fostered mutual understanding and, ultimately, agreement. What's truly fascinating here, as the sources emphasize, is that this revered title, Ambassador of Unity, wasn't just mere flattery, not just a polite political epithet. It was a genuine, deeply felt reflection of his unparalleled contribution to this monumental achievement, a testament to his character and his strategic vision.
It meant something real.
It really did. It represented a recognition that his specific blend of legal acumen, political moderation, and unwavering commitment to constitutionalism had made the seemingly impossible possible. His influence stemmed not just from his intellect, but from a profound respect for his impartiality and his dedication to finding a just solution for all.
Absolutely. And our sources even bring in an earlier, almost prophetic prediction that gives further weight to this moment. Gopal Krishna Gokhale, a towering figure, a widely respected moderate leader of the time, had previously foreseen that Jinnah, with his unique qualities, would someday be India's greatest bridge between communities.
Amazing foresight.
Isn't it? The Lucknow Pact, forged through Jinnah's tireless efforts in many profound ways, spectacularly fulfilled that incredible prophecy. Imagine having the kind of remarkable foresight about someone, to recognize their unique potential for unity building so early in their career, long before they achieve such a monumental political success.
It really underlines his significance.
It lends even more significance and weight to Jinnah's actions at Lucknow, demonstrating that his extraordinary capacity for fostering cooperation and transcending divisions was not a sudden development, but an inherent, deeply ingrained quality that even the most astute and respected contemporaries recognized in him. It marks him as a truly exceptional figure in a period brimming with powerful personalities.
Indeed. And the ultimate success of the pact, and Jinnah's earning of that revered title, were fundamentally due to his unwavering patience, his fundamental fairness in dealing with the often conflicting demands of both sides, and his remarkable legal clarity, translating complex political aspirations into concrete, actionable terms.
He wasn't just mediating surface disagreements.
No, far from it. He wasn't just smoothing over ruffled feathers. He was meticulously working through deeply complex legal and political issues, ensuring the language of the agreement was precise, just, and capable of being implemented. He truly embodied the spirit of constitutional compromise, demonstrating unequivocally that deeply rooted, complex issues could be resolved through sustained, patient dialogue and mutual respect, rather than through confrontational tactics, rigid adherence to maximalist demands, or the exploitation of existing divisions.
That highlights a crucial difference.
Absolutely. The difference between simple mediation and the arduous, legally sound problem-solving required to forge a lasting, mutually acceptable political agreement, especially one of such national significance. His approach really set a standard for principled negotiation in Indian politics.
So, as we step back from the specific historical details, what does this extraordinary chapter in Indian history truly tell us? Beyond just the facts and figures of 1916, our deep dive into the Lucknow Pact and Muhammad Ali Jinnah's truly unique and indispensable role offers some really crucial, enduring lessons. Lessons that resonate profoundly and are remarkably relevant even today, far beyond the confines of early 20th century India.
Well, it raises an important question for any era, doesn't it? For any society grappling with division, unity undeniably requires compromise. The sources clearly and unequivocally show that without significant, often difficult concessions from both sides, the acceptance of separate electorates and weightage
by the Hindu leadership within the Congress, and the commitment to broader national cooperation with the Congress from the Muslim League, this agreement simply would have failed. It wouldn't have happened.
It was built on those concessions.
Exactly. It's a stark, undeniable reminder that true, lasting cooperation isn't about one side achieving a complete victory or imposing its will on the other. It's fundamentally about finding common ground, even when that means giving something up, even when it means making a difficult choice that goes against long-held traditional positions or ideals.
Recognizing the bigger picture.
Precisely. Recognizing that the collective gain and the shared future outweigh individual, unyielding stances. This applies to everything, really, from international diplomacy and national politics right down to interpersonal relationships. Real progress is almost always born from a courageous willingness to meet halfway, to concede, and to understand the other's perspective.
And here's where, for me, the human element becomes so powerfully evident. Leadership is intrinsically about trust. Our sources are absolutely unequivocal that Jinnah's personal credibility, his universally acknowledged integrity, were the absolute key factors in making the Lucknow Pact a tangible reality.
Couldn't have happened without it.
He was trusted across the communal divide because he was consistently perceived as fair, moderate, deeply committed to a constitutional, reasoned path, and crucially, not an ideologue pushing some narrow partisan agenda. Without that fundamental bedrock of trust, that belief in his impartiality and his good faith, no amount of brilliant negotiation or logical argument, however compelling, would have worked, would it?
No. People simply wouldn't have believed in the process, or the sincerity of the other side, or the eventual outcome.
Think about contemporary leaders you genuinely admire often. Their influence isn't just about their policies or their charisma, but about the profound trust they inspire through their integrity, their consistency, their perceived fairness. This historical example powerfully demonstrates that trust is often far more potent and effective than mere authority in fostering genuine cooperation and forging unity.
And finally, a lesson that is perhaps more relevant than ever in our highly polarized world, where quick solutions and grand declarations often dominate discourse. Constitutions and fundamental rights grow organically from dialogue. Rights are secured not by emotionally charged slogans, not by demands alone, and certainly not by unilateral declarations. They're secured by painstakingly crafted agreements, by intricate negotiations, and by persistent, patient dialogue.
It's hard work.
It is hard work. The Lucknow Pact wasn't declared into existence by a single leader or a single resolution. It was negotiated, clause by careful clause, through mutual understanding, through countless hours of discussion and deliberation, and through a willingness to confront and resolve contentious points. This highlights the often painstaking, iterative, and sometimes arduous process of nation-building and securing fundamental rights. It's a long game, built on compromise and agreement, not just aspirational statements or maximalist positions.
It makes you reflect, doesn't it?
It does. How many historical movements, and even current ones, might achieve more sustainable, inclusive, and lasting outcomes if they prioritize this emphasis on patient dialogue, meticulous negotiation, and the forging of concrete, legally binding agreements, rather than succumbing to the allure of immediate, often divisive declarations? It's a testament to the power of structured, respectful conversation in political advancement.
So, what does this all mean for us today, looking back at this remarkable chapter? The Lucknow Pact was, as our sources so eloquently describe, perhaps the high watermark of Hindu-Muslim cooperation during the Indian independence movement.
The real peak.
It stood as a powerful, living testament that with wise, principled leadership, a genuine commitment to fairness, and the immense courage to compromise on deeply held positions, coexistence was not just a distant, idealistic dream, but a tangible, achievable reality. It's a profound moment in history, reminding us of what's truly possible when political will aligns with the fundamental principles of unity and mutual respect.
Though later events, sadly, would indeed unravel much of that unity, demonstrating the inherent fragility and ephemeral nature of even the most significant political agreements when faced with shifting political tides and new pressures. In 1916, Muhammad Ali Jinnah stood tall, undeniably, as the ambassador of unity.
That title really stuck.
Yeah, it did. And this deep dive profoundly reminds us that before he became known much later as the architect of Pakistan, Jinnah was, first and foremost, a builder of bridges. A leader who believed fundamentally in justice, in constitutionalism, in cooperation, and in the power of dialogue. This earlier vision, his incredible achievement at Lucknow, and the principles he espoused during this period are a critical, foundational part of understanding his full, complex, and often debated historical story. It offers crucial insight into his evolving political philosophy.
And this leaves us, as always, with a provocative thought. Something for you to mull over long after our deep dive concludes. If a moment of such profound unity could be forged from such deep divisions through the extraordinary power of trust, principled leadership, and genuine compromise, as we've witnessed with the Lucknow Pact, what does that tell us about the ongoing, often daunting challenges of unity in our own time? How can we apply the hard-won, timeless lessons of 1916, the imperative for principled leadership, the undeniable power of mutual trust, and the absolute necessity of genuine, difficult compromise to the bridge-building efforts that are so desperately needed today, whether in our communities, our nations, or indeed across the entire globe?